Right now at your company, there's a role opening up that probably didn't exist like 18 months ago. Somebody's about to become the person who owns AI. It's probably not going to be the most senior person on your team either, and it's definitely not going to be whoever read the most about it on Twitter or has the hottest takes about some YouTube video they've seen about it. In this video, I want to give you the actual 2026 roadmap to become the AI lead within your company. And I'm not talking about going and getting a math degree or switching into ML or AI theory or something like that you're never ever going to use. I'm going to show you exactly what to learn, the one project you need to make that forces you to learn all of it, and then the one skill that nobody ever puts on these roadmaps that actually decides whether you're going to get the role, where you sit there and watch somebody else get it. I've watched this happen up close, and I've also kind of lived this. I got laid off as an engineering manager, landed at a very fast-paced AI startup as a regular individual contributor, went to another one and kind of became the AI guy. And when they first gave me the title of AI engineer, I was like, me? This dude? I got into tech around 30 from a boot camp. I'm barely a mathematician. I don't even really call myself a software engineer. But hey, I'm going to take the title. I helped build out their RAG and agent architecture. And then at another company, a system to help Fortune 500 buyers find suppliers through deep web searches. Kind of cool and also kind of boring. Companies are willing to pay a lot of money for these skills. So the first thing about this AI lead role is that you don't necessarily apply for it, right? There's not a lot of job postings out there. There's no recruiter necessarily sliding into your inbox. You kind of just back into it, right? Every company on the planet is doing AI right now. They're going AI first, AI native. Whatever phrase this quarter is in fashion, and honestly, my brain hurts kind of saying it, right? We're going to have agents talking to agents, pods full of prompts. We're going to be fully AI native, which they've been after for like 3 quarters now. And most of the time, what this actually turns into is a chatbot bolted onto something that didn't need a chatbot in the first place. But underneath all the noise and the ridiculous hype, there is a gap, and leadership has some mandate. They have the pressure to do something. What they don't usually have is a single person in the building who can ship the thing. And you can hear this in the way they talk about it. Your manager may come to the team and say, we're going to build an agent this quarter. Everybody has an agent. We need some agentic layer in our program. And what they just described, if you actually listen, is probably closer to a workflow where some non-technical executive vibe codes an app in one of those prompt to app tools over a weekend, and it looks really, really cool. And then it face plants once you try to make it go live or use any real data with it. I've watched this happen, and perhaps you have too. So somebody has to stand in this gap and translate between the hype and what's actually true and doable and valuable for the company. And whoever does that over and over becomes the AI lead. Now there's a name for this, and it's kind of become the hottest version of this particular role on the job market right now. Forward deployed engineer. It's basically a developer who can embed into a company, walk into their dismal AI strategy, and then build the thing while figuring out what they actually need to build in the first place. And in big tech, super AI adopter cities like San Francisco, Austin, New York, Miami, these roles are paying individual contributors somewhere in the $200,000 to $350,000 a year range, which is nuts. Your mileage is going to vary a lot depending on where you are, of course. I'm not going to pretend that everybody's just going to hit that. But my point is, you can be the forward deployed person in your team. You've already got the access. You're already inside the company. You don't need some fancy title to start. One of the students at Parsity in our AI cohort had 0 AI systems experience when he walked in. Now he is running the AI initiative within his company, which is pretty nuts, but it makes a lot of sense. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And not to say he's the one-eyed man, he just has more knowledge than anybody else around him. So by default, he's going to need to lead these types of initiatives. So what do you actually have to do to become that person? I promise you it's way, way less than the internet and YouTube wants you to believe. You don't need to train models. You don't need to start with linear algebra like I did. I made this exact same mistake early, right? I bought one of these big fat math books. I bought the book on how large language models work at a deep level. I'm reading these white papers and scientific papers on RAG and attention, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm learning all this stuff. This is great. And I didn't get any of it until I got thrown into an actual project at work. And I was like, oh, that's what this is. This is re-ranking. This is a vector database. Here's an agent architecture. Here's like a system that we can use to talk between agents. AI engineering in practice, not in research. In reality, it's like full stack software engineering with a few new tools bolted on. If you can build a web app, call an API, you know what a database is, and you know how to use one. If you've worked with different flavors of databases like SQL, NoSQL, and understand how to make semi-complex queries, you're honestly about 80% of the way there already. And real quick, because I know somebody's probably typing this right now or thinking this, being super fast with Cursor and Claude and prompting stuff, this is a great skill. And I use the tools constantly. I'm not totally knocking them, although I have a lot of complaints, right? But that's table stakes. Everybody's doing that. The leverage is everything around the prompt, around the large language model. So here's everything around the prompt that I think you need to know. First thing is RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. It's the backbone of basically every production AI system you've ever touched. LinkedIn literally put this at the #1 spot in their emerging skill list for developers. And I've been saying it for like 2 years now, so give myself a tiny little pat on the back here. And all RAG means is giving the model the right data at the right moment. So it has an answer grounded in some sort of truth rather than just making something up. You ask it about your company vacation policy or some documents that you've got from the web or some information about customers or patients in your database. If you've ever used something like Elasticsearch, it's kind of like that, but on steroids, right? Now here's the trap. The tutorial version of RAG is something like embed this thing, throw in a vector store, done. In reality, in a production version, you need to think through the chunking strategy. How do you break up these documents? How do you maintain the context? How do you not have a bunch of junk go in and then get a bunch of junk out? You need to think about re-ranking, why that matters and why you might want to use it. Most of the data you're going to work with is not a clean set of PDFs. It's usually living data that updates, goes stale, needs to be re-ranked, chunked, indexed, all this kind of stuff. And this is a massive gap that a lot of companies are struggling to hire for. Thing two, numero dos, is knowing agent architecture and the difference between an agent and a workflow. To be completely honest, if you read Anthropic's white paper, Building Effective Agents, which is a really short, very practical paper, you're going to know a lot more than the majority of people out there, and you're going to have a very good way to defend against people that say, we need to build an agent. Most companies don't actually need an agent. They need something that more resembles a workflow. Agent A may have some logic that calls agent B or agent C or agent B and C in parallel, rather than just giving agent A a bunch of tools and saying, you figure it out. This is both difficult to debug and can really blow up your token bill, and also just locks you into a pattern that isn't the right one for all the use cases. I would say most businesses need a workflow over an agent, and knowing the difference between them is super important. And then when you're in a meeting and somebody inevitably says, we need to build an agent, and then they describe what it is, you can push back and say, yeah, that's great, but what you're describing isn't an agent, it's a workflow, and here's how we could build that. In fact, this happened at that TikTok influencer company when they were pushing us to build an agent that just did quote unquote everything. And I had to push back very hard on this idea and say, we don't want it to do everything. We have a set of discrete tasks that we need to accomplish here. We can do this with tool calling, or we can do a router, or we can do both and see what works better, right? There's no right answer, but there are certainly wrong ones. And at least knowing the difference in the trade-offs between the two patterns that you can use leads to better discussion and shows that you actually think and give a damn about what you're going to ship out there to customers. Now, thing three, the boring one that nobody really wants to learn or cares about, apparently, observability, token costs, evals. But this is where boring old software engineering meets the AI hype, right? You can plug in Langsmith and see what your system is doing and see what it's costing you. And writing evals is kind of like end-to-end tests for your AI system. So when the model upgrades overnight or somebody updates a prompt, you can run a set of scenarios with some criteria to judge those scenarios and how the AI responded, and see if what you built still makes sense and if it responds to those questions which you're going to anticipate users are going to ask in the correct way. Now, I certainly didn't do this at first, and I remember very vividly working with one of the CEOs one day, updating a ton of prompts to fix some scenarios we saw weren't working with our agent. We fixed those. However, I didn't test the other, 30, 40, 50 variations of things that people could say. I didn't have any evals running. Shame on me, right? I went back the next day, saw the other CEO. She said, let's test this out. I said, oh, I can't wait. Let me show you how awesome this is. She asked a curveball question. Agent fell on its face, made me look pretty bad. I wrote a bunch of evals after that day because even though we hadn't deployed yet, I wanted to make sure that I could run these locally and ensure that whatever changes I was introducing didn't cause regressions on all the other logic that we had tried so hard to make work. I noticed that basically nobody makes content about this, but every company on earth needs this, and you're going to see this in job listings for sure for any role that requires some sort of AI systems. Oh, and whoever's telling you to get a master's in ML or something like that, or just forget TypeScript, learn Python, you can go build one project, grab some content from the web, find something that's difficult to get. The more difficulty that it takes you to get the data, the more valuable the product that you're going to build is going to be. You're going to learn a lot more from grabbing messy, unstructured data from either scraping the web or looking at data within your own company, or maybe even looking at data that you may have, like stuff that you may track about yourself. If you're some sort of type A personality and you've looked at your finances all over the years, or you have a journal full of like every day and what you ate and all these things like that, you could dump all that into a system and use RAG or vector database or SQL or whatever to structure this data and then surface it to an agent. You could even go after other creators out there. Like you could look at big YouTube channels, get the transcripts from them, the videos, ethically find a way to get the stuff they say or the stuff they've written or done, and then drop it into some sort of vector database so you can understand a little bit more about how those work. I would use Pinecone or Quadrant personally if I was going to get started on this. And some sort of agent that would determine what to do with the user's question. They ask a question about the data you have, and then you could go retrieve it by generating a bunch of queries, and then it could retrieve it by generating a series of queries and doing like parallel searches or something like that. Or maybe you could do a web search instead. Identify at least 2 routes that your agent could take, and then create the logic for those routes. It could be one LLM call to another LLM call, an LLM call that triggers a web search, an LLM call that triggers a vector search, or some combination of those options. Then wrap an observability layer around the whole thing. This is the part that most people skip or just don't know how to do. Just use Langsmith. Stupid easy to get started with. And then write some evals for this. Evals are not free. If you've ever seen the testing pyramid, you see that unit tests take up the majority of the pyramid, then integration tests, and finally at the top you have end-to-end tests. If you think about AI systems kind of like that, well, evals would be in that end-to-end category. You need to have a live running app, and then you need to test it end to end. You give your agent a query and you see the response and you judge it based on some criteria. You have another large language model actually judge the output and give it a score of like 0 to 10 or something like that, with 7 being the threshold, maybe some sort of arbitrary threshold that you create to say, this is good enough. Now I know the agent is not completely borked. And then once you've built this whole thing out, rip it up and build it again using tool calling, or use streaming for the front end, or use LangGraph or some other cool library out there to abstract the agent piece. You can use for Sales AI SDK. LangGraph is super duper popular and also has a steep learning curve, but is probably worth learning as well. Building this one project and then doing some rebuilding is going to force you to learn every skill that I just talked about. And there's one last skill that's actually going to decide whether you become the AI lead or stay exactly where you are. And I have never, not once, ever seen this on a roadmap. It's articulation, right? It's being able to explain the thing, have an opinion on that thing that you can defend. Here's why this matters so much more in AI than anything else you've ever probably done. The field in this stuff is so new that you're usually explaining stuff to people more senior than you, people who don't have a foundation to evaluate it. They literally can't really check your work. They end up going on social media or whatever to try to gain opinions. Think about what this means for a second. Your ability to make the case is the deliverable more than the code itself. On your team, in front of the CTO, in front of the people who've never opened a terminal in their life, maybe the CEO or the product manager or whatever. I don't mean walking in and going, hey, here's the tech that fits this use case. I'm in an actual position. Why this approach? Why not that one? Can you tell them what a vector database is and how it's useful here? What it might cost them? A lot of these AI decisions are one-way doors. Dense vectors or sparse vectors, monolith or microservices. Do we even need a vector database at all, right? Is there a simpler way to do this? We're already using Postgres. Can we use PG vector? Do we even need vectors at all? These are sticky, expensive, hard to reverse calls. They need context and a point of view you can defend, and non-technical people genuinely cannot make them or should not make them without you. That's your leverage right there. So how do you get good at this? Record yourself explaining what you built out loud, ideally every single week. Like you're explaining it to a non-technical CTO, which do exist, or to a CEO, or to a person in marketing, or to a product manager who's smart but just doesn't understand software architecture. It feels kind of stupid the first 2 or 3 times, or 10, right? I'm not gonna lie to you. It's also the highest leverage thing you could probably do, and this is basically what we do at Parsity and why we've made this a core piece of our deliverables for every single student. We have mentors going through your code and pushing you until you can defend those positions, looking at the videos you create, the design documents. It's all at parsity.io, which you can go to in the description. Now, there's something else I want you to see. I built an AI engineer interview. I put working developers through it, and most of them just didn't make it. Some of them got caught cheating. It was genuinely some of the wildest stuff I've ever seen. That video is over there. You can go watch it. It's the fastest way to see the exact bar you're being measured against. It's a little horrifying, I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, I hope you learned some stuff. I'll see you around.